hear that. Good morning. How's everybody doing?
Not bad at all. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I am
Good,
doing
good.
yes. You
Well, you
know,
see, as you reach Steve turn talk police, he don't make joke when you hear, he don't talk police, or you're talking too much already. Oh, yes, he don't make, but I messaged him this week. Last week, I said we have Anita on, he sent a dancing emoji. Oh, yeah. And then I told him, guy, go fetch someone tomorrow, and I wouldn't like to tell the emoji he sent. Good morning. All right, let's get a sense. I guess we could start with local government election, and
We could start. Well, we could start with the poll.
yeah, we can actually, yes.
Yeah, because our poll this morning, Anita, was whether you think Trinidad and Tobago is a failing state, and of course, you had a mix of votes from our listeners. The majority said no, we are not. Am I right, Wendell? I think the majority said no.
Yeah, the majority. 15 said no, 11 said yes.
So, what's your take on it, Anita?
Well, failing state. The term failing state has a fixed definition. And based on the definition, I would not consider us to be a failing state. We do have, by and large, democratic principles governing us. We have a way out of our economic situation, and with proper policies enacted, we certainly could be on a path to development. I think we as Caribbean culture, Trinidad and Tobago culture, we could be hyperbolic in a lot of ways. So to say a failing state, that is a term that is used in political science to define a mix of political, economic, national security spaces that I think we can be concerned that it may eventually present itself, but certainly not. I would not go so far. Certainly not as a policymaker or a person who would like to be in policymaking to consider us to be a failing state. Because once you get to that point, it is difficult to ever be able to come back. And so I don't think we're at that point.
You see why I have to like you? Thank you very much.
Why is that?
No, because you're always honest with your answers. I mean, and you didn't play politics with this one, because I sense from some people that they play in politics with their comments.
No,
you understand?
But the thing is, right, as a member of the United National Congress and a person that will face the electorate or has faced the electorate and say and would have said that we have a mix of policies and ideas and interventions that would get us to X point. I don't think any of us would say that we are at that, because then we would then have to re-articulate our policies to correct what is a failing state. So I don't think we've ever said that. We've said that things are bad.
Yeah.
That things have gotten worse over the past 8 years, that we can see areas where, for example, within the national security space, within the post-COVID economic space, as well as in the pre-COVID economic space, that things needed to change and need to change quickly. So that is a valid discussion. But if we take the discussion into something that it is not, then we become unproductive. And that is something I'm unwilling to do.
Well, someone messaged me a while ago and asked me why we asking a question like that. It is for the very reason for clarification we ask questions like this.
Yeah.
So people can be put back on the track of sound thinking and not propagate misinformation or misconceptions about the country.
I mean, as well as we exist in a space and we exist in a culture where you have to capture people's attention. So I can understand why the question is asked. I think the meat of it is when the question is answered. So I'm not offended that the question could be asked. I just think that we do have to be responsible in our conversation, especially because we are going 2024, 2025. We just came out of local government elections, and if you exist within the political landscape, we are all now properly on election footing. And so I've always maintained that my entry into the political landscape has always been one to promote sensible discussion, so that persons will be more willing to pay attention, more willing to get involved, and find their agency within our national development. And if we promote the idea that our country has already failed, then what are we saying to my generation about what we can do to make it better? And I think there are things that we can do. I know there are things that we can do. And I think that overall in the population, we have the capacity to do it. We just have to harness it and get it on the right direction. And where I am at now is I just don't believe we are on the right direction. We're in the right direction right now.
MP Haynes, you just said something there that make me pause raise. That you have decided, since you've gotten into the political landscape, you have decided to have intelligent conversation so that more people could start listening. I just wish all politicians would talk like that. I really do. And I'm speaking on both sides here. Have an intelligent conversation. Let the people who listening decide, hey, I like what I'm hearing from Ms. Haynes. I think I want to listen to Ms. Haynes some more. I think, that is, to me, that is the level we should reach in the politics instead of the levels that we have reached thus far on both sides. I'll say
I think that's why Anita Haynes has always been an asset to the United National Congress and the country, because the tendency of some politicians on both sides, quite frankly, to descend into hyperbolic and descend into populist and what's the word? I'm trying to be gentle here. Incendiary rhetoric is not productive. And to me, Anita has always been sober thinking and able to articulate her thoughts, even though you could disagree respectfully. Local government elections is completed. Give us a sense of what's happening. Is it the Princestown Regional Corporation, or that's in your constituency, or more than one?
No. My constituency is solely in the Tabaquite Regional Corporation.
And how has that gone in terms of aldermen and swearing in of councils and stuff?
Well, for the Tabaquite Regional Corporation, we secured, the United National Congress secured all 15 spaces that were up in the election, and all 4 aldermen. So I would say very well.
But that was never in doubt. Come on, that's one of those.
No, but we went from 3 aldermen to 4. So it shows you in terms of the proportional representation on that aspect, we captured more votes this time around. So I mean, yes, it
was an extra seat there too, not so?
Yeah, there was an extra seat, the Royce Jr. There's a new seat. Let me not say an extra.
A new seat, yes.
A new seat, yes. New seat, Royce Jr. So we had, so there would have been a new candidate placed into that seat, and in my own constituency, I had 2 new local government representatives coming in, Miss Sharon Badal Ahu and Mr. Ravi Puran Maraj. And so, we are looking forward, I guess, to new spaces within local government representation in my constituency, as well as in the Tabaquite Regional Corporation overall. I attended the swearing in last Tuesday to lend support to the persons who I will be working with, as a member of parliament and as an opposition member of parliament. I am very dependent on the regional corporation to lend aid within my constituency. So, we maintain a very, very good working relationship in that space.
Now, the chairman of that corporation, he's been there for quite some time. If 3 or 4 terms, I'm not certain.
Yes.
Henry Awong. Awong.
Yes,
he's a councillor also too, not so, isn't he?
Correct. Is the councillor for Piparis and Petro Tabaquite, which is where I vote, because I'm from Piparis. So.
Okay. Is he expected to return as chairman, or because I think I was reading somewhere there was somebody in the running also?
Well, I mean, I know you as a person who would have existed within the political party system will know as well as I can't answer that. I can't. We'll see.
You're so nice, open I would catch you. And
no, I mean, I would be guessing. We will see. I think the swearing in will take place. Those swearing in will take place over the course of the year.
Yes.
So,
how is the UNC intending to move forward when the law becomes fully proclaimed? We interviewed the Prime Minister, I think the Friday before the election, and we asked him about the timeline for proclamation of the other clauses. The UNC has steadfastly said We are not in support of the reform. I'm paraphrasing here, but it will become law by January, in the words of the Prime Minister, if that comes to pass, and the full proclamation is enacted by January 2024. So, how is the UNC intending, from discussions I guess you may be privy to, or your mindset, in terms of dealing with this new paradigm?
Well, the part of the overall landscape of local government reform that we're taking issue with at this time is the property tax introduction. And the UNC has been clear that right now it's also a question of timing. It's a question of whether or not the population is in a space to add an additional tax on citizens. Um, Again, I exist as a member of parliament. I see on a daily basis, and right now, I mean, when I am done with this interview, I'm in my office going through requests with respect to book lists and stationery and back to school costs and that sort of thing. And um, I can't speak to what obtained before, but I can tell you, I was surprised by the sheer number, the need, how many people are coming forward and saying, look, we simply cannot afford. Um, and that's on things like food, back to school, essentials. Um, and so that is what we're looking at in terms of the timing of enacting that space in terms of local government reform. Do we understand absolutely that there is a need to rethink how local government is
But it's going to
funded?
be law. It's going to be law. It's going to be law that governs how the corporations are funded. So whether you agree with it or not, it's going to be the law.
Yeah, but then outside of that, we exist in Trinidad and Tobago, right? We face issues with tax collection. We face issues within that entire landscape. And yes, we're told this is a solution, but we live here, so we do have to wait and see how it will roll out in actuality. I really am unwilling to speak in terms of the assumption of a seamless rollout, an easy system of tax collection, and I don't, it does not work that way right now. And so you're right, it will become the law. We have done what we were able to do in terms of the parliamentary process, raising certain issues um as part of the legislative process. The political directorate within the United National Congress will decide if we'll take any other course of action between now and January, and make any announcements in due course. But as of right now, we will have to see. But I would like to reiterate that, I mean, whether or not it is the law, the people of Trinidad and Tobago are facing really onerous circumstances. And so, I mean, yes, it may be the law, but if you don't have, you don't have. And so, what are you going to do? you know?
Are you surprised, or were you surprised by the intensity of the local government election campaigns in PNM, UNC, but then also the new parties, because it was a local government election that I've never seen before in terms of this level of intensity. And as you said earlier on, it really was the start of 2025 general election campaign, seemingly for most parties.
Um, no, I was not surprised by the intensity. I taking it into context. This is a post-COVID outside election, right? 2020, we had a mix of virtual meetings and so this was, Trinidad and Tobago politics coming back outside. And so I wasn't surprised by the intensity. Those of us, again, who exist within political spaces, persons in the media, etc., I think we were all caught in the buzz of the election, but the general population, I I don't think the interest was captured.
Yeah.
Um, And so, as a person who's
Why do you think that is?
why do I think that is? I think that right now, the population, people have specific things on their mind. They have the state of the country in terms of your own personal safety. You have questions of how are you going to build and grow, and especially if you're in that sub 40 age group and you're looking on, and how are you doing things like saving for a house and pursuing a sustainable career and things, and you're trying to figure that out. And I think that um the once the conversations hit the political platforms, while we raise the issues, we aren't giving the answers, and so people tuned out.
Well, all of those are reasons why people should vote. Because, but obviously, for a lot of people, and this is a possible interpretation of it, so let me preface it by saying that, is that a lot of people obviously don't see that the PNM or the UNC has the solutions, because 70% of the population stayed away from voting, even though, of course, generally local government has a
Is
low turnout, but it has a low turnout for a reason.
Yeah.
People obviously don't think that this impacts their lives in a positive way, and that voting somehow can help transform their lives. They don't think
Correct.
it connects.
Correct. And I think overall, we really do have to, as political person, so for myself as well, that's why I participated in so many walkabouts, and not just within my own constituency, but outside as well, because there is a need to meet people where they are and get into the conversation as to why local government is important and what it means. Because as a member of parliament, on my office day, by and large, the issues that come to me are local government issues. People don't see it as such, right? But they are local government issues, whatever drainage concerns, garbage collection, etc. And but you're right in terms of people figuring out how this impacts your life, and more importantly, how your vote impacts the system. And I think this year, if you weren't sure, with so many places having 5 voter difference, one one vote difference, and to suggest that your vote can't make a difference or it wouldn't make a difference, I think we're seeing, mm, you know,
That it could have.
it
Yeah.
really could. It
Let
really.
me let me piggyback on the issue Richard just raised with you, MP Haynes, in terms of the messages that both camps came out with. Now, the PNM would have come out with a message of local government reform, and a lot of people were wary of it because they've heard it so many times. So people were wary of it. And then the UNC, on the other hand, dealt with crime and all the light it up comments and load up the matic and all kind of thing. That clearly also probably was a turn off to a lot of people. Now, I'm saying this in the context of local government being a low poll, but maybe it might have been it would have been lower. You understand? Because of the messages. Because let's face it, let me go to the PNM's message in terms of local government reform and full-time councillors and so on. That is not going to happen. That's my opinion. Because you have already elected people into office. Okay? So at what point in time during the course of the term will you tell them, leave your job and be a full-time person? So that is not going to happen during this term. It might happen for the next term. But that part of the reform that requires people to be full-time councillors can't happen when you've already elected them into office, right? That's one. And of course, and that's on this side. And on the other side, of course, this issue of arming people in a society where we're seeing the results of people being armed illegally and some illegally. How those messages to me, what do you think of those both messages?
So part of what was required was one, gaining the interest of the electorate, so that you wanted them to pay attention. When I speak to some of my past schoolmates, old colleagues, etc., where especially around election time, people consider the ads to just be a turn off because you're trying to listen to your music, and then incoming political ads. So we need to get people to pay attention. I think that the PNM being in government and campaigning on reforming a system that you fully well have the power already to reform, or that you didn't require local government elections to do that, was would not have connected. The UNC's message of securing communities, I think there's a space where the message of what can be done in local government to secure your communities, where Mrs. Kamala Prasad Bisasa would have stated things like um, using local government councils for um, the municipal police, as well as gated communities and some other things. Those very those issues of how you will utilize local government in a national security space got lost in the more sensational spaces
But
of.
wouldn't it get lost too when you're hearing rhetoric like cock it back, reload, empty the clip? Wouldn't those salient messages be lost with those very, very hyperactive comments?
Correct. And it was, Ms. Prasad Bisasa raised that she was at that time trying to connect with a voting demographic that was in that 18 to 25 age group, who listens to K Lion, who listens to that. Because it's a song, right? It is lyrics from a song. She didn't make it up, right? It wasn't new. Um, and so so she included the lyrics from the song. No, I get it, right? I get that it could have been jarring, but it exists within our music. It exists within our creative landscape, and so I think the question is, how did it translate on the.
Do you believe it backfired then?
Pardon?
Do you believe it backfired? Comments
I,
like that on the political platform backfired.
I do believe that it
No
needs.
pun intended.
I do believe that coming out of the local government elections, any political organization will look at the strategies that you implemented and figure out what would work for a general election campaign. And if it's not going to work, then I don't think it ought to be used.
Okay.
But do you think they were responsible statements on a national platform?
Again, I think that the so I know the songs, right? I listen to the songs. That's why I listen to and from work, believe it or not, right? And so
Miss
I understand where it
Haynes?
is in the entertainment landscape. Like I said, I do believe it. We need to rethink how it translates onto the political platform.
So you don't think it was appropriate?
I think it needs to be rethought on how it's used.
Paul, you played me this morning.
Communication is really your forte, and I'll be, because I respect your right to respond in a particular way. I'll leave it alone, because I think we've seen the taking it out of the political realm. We've seen the editorials calling for more restraint given the environment, and I understand someone wanting to get national attention on very, very serious issues, but sometimes, depending on how the message is articulated, it may, in some instances, cause more damage.
Yeah, understood. And like I said, we are a political institution, and so obviously, once we get into our strategic planning, we would be looking very closely at what worked, what did not work, and what could work better, and reformulating and coming back to the electorate and the population. I mean, we'll enter budget space. We will then go into 2024 very quickly. I mean, I honestly.
I'm gonna be mischievous here. I'm gonna be mischievous. How are you using the PRO?
Well, the constitution of the UNC does not allow for a sitting member of the House of
Okay.
Representatives to be the PRO. So
You know, that's the only excuse I'm accepting.
Anyway, well,
The issue
go
I wanted
ahead.
to raise, yeah, I wanted to raise the issue of the UNC as an alternative to the People's National Movement. Now, in this local government election, UNC got a popular vote. And I know Wendell and well, in general discussion here between the three of us, we generally say that people vote a party out in the sense of it's not that they so much want the other party, but it's when because of the choices and because we're basically a two-party state, the other party gets the vote by default because I am annoyed with the current party, so I'm voting you out. And so the other party gets my vote regardless. And that's not, of course, a healthy way for voters to vote. The other choice should be a valid choice.
Certainly.
Do you think that the UNC suffers, let me put it that way, suffers from attractiveness problem with a lot of voters with regard to your current leadership? Try to phrase it politely.
I think that over the course of the next year, certainly the next fiscal year, the United National Congress will embark on a strategy of being very clear with the population as to what we would be doing to correct some of the things that we see are going wrong within the country. You can expect to see, I think, very clear and distinct messaging rollouts, policy making rollouts, and we are going to be doing that in the hopes that we can show the population, rather than just being an alternative to the PNM, that we are poised with the strategies for national development. And I think that becomes important, especially where we are right now. What people need to hear is what's going to be done differently, and how do we expect that difference to manifest itself, and where do we expect it to take place, and timelines. And so I think you will be seeing a lot of that.
MP Haynes, let me paint this picture for you, right? That a lot of people are also seeing, right? And you'll tell me how you interpret it. The East West, to win government, as Richard rightfully pointed out, you have to be, you most times you are voted out, right? The party in government is voted out. And to be voted out, you have to capture seats along the East-West corridor, right? The specter of a government being led again by Mrs. Kamala Persad Bissessar, that includes, and I'll call names, Annan Ramlogan, Anil Roberts, David Nackett, that on the East-West corridor, I'm sorry, it's just not going to work. To get government, you have to win seats on the East-West corridor. And people are seeing these people hovering in the background. First, she's continue to have some of them in the parliament, in the Senate. You understand? They are very disrespectful. They've been disrespectful to the head of state and to so many other people. And just the specter of them holding a senior position in our government, to me, will have an effect on the UNC's ability to dislodge the PNM from government. That's my opinion, but it's also the opinion of some other people. What are your thoughts?
So most political organizations do polling, you do data collection. We also, again, coming out of the local government space, where we saw really close numbers in spaces within the Arima Borough Corporation. At least two of them were within, I think, 40 votes between the two organizations. I think it is very easy for us to take the more vociferous opinions and say, listen, people are not going to like this and they're not going to like that. And then, for example, I'll give you Anna Roberts as an example. He is on our national executive as the Northeast coordinator. So he coordinates the seats on the northeastern part of Trinidad and Tobago. And within those spaces, we did really well in the local government election in either gaining ground. We saw additional spaces within the Sangre Grande Regional Corporation. And so people may be saying something, but there are contributions there that we cannot ignore. And so while I understand, like I said, I understand what you're saying, but coming out of it, there are persons who have lent a certain level of contribution within the organization. And I use Anna Roberts as an example because of the work that was done on the northeastern region and the
I
reward.
Anita, but I think Wendell's point is lifting the level of the conversation for the benefit of the electorate. And when you have conversations or statements coming from the political elites that are, as Paul would have said earlier, incendiary, negative, very classless, crass, and you have that kind of language being hurled in the political realm, the electorate is like, what? These are the people we elected? Because there is justification on both sides why the representatives who have said whatever, who have done whatever, are there. Just like how you're justifying the value of Anil, which is really what you're doing there. You're justifying its value. But the larger context of the electorate is that we are not seeing, for a vast majority of the electorate, I want to say, we're not seeing the level of conversation. For a small island state, there is too much rancor and disunity. And you're in a competitive arena where other small island states and other countries really are not, they're not market time waiting on you. They're moving ahead, and some of them are more unified in their purpose, even between their opposition and their governing party. They're moving ahead with a particular purpose and the unity in getting their country to move forward globally. Because you can't talk about Trinidad and Tobago without, and our movement forward, without raising our place in the global scheme of things. And to make yourself globally competitive requires unity on both sides. But when you have that kind of rancor going back and forth and explanations from both sides as to why that person is valued, it kind of sinks the electorate's heart, I think.
Yeah. Look, I understand. I've always believed that, let me start by saying, we really cannot put the electorate as all one homogeneous group, right? There is a section of the electorate that, the way I speak, that I appeal to that section of the electorate. And then there's a section of the electorate that will tell me very consistently, you have to be more aggressive. You have to be more X, Y, and Z. And those are responses you get. And so different political actors respond different ways into the information that is being fed into them, right? From a varied group of persons that come together to become the electorate. And so I hear what you're saying. The only commitment I can give is that those of us who are coming into this space, we will, like those who held spaces before, we have to respond to what people are telling us. And what people are telling us now is that they will not come out to vote unless they see something different. And so we, who are in the political landscape now, have to be prepared to give them something different. So
does it mean that the party took away from the low voter turnout, despite intense campaign, despite new options available, that the approach from all parties or most parties was not what stimulated the electorate to come out and vote?
Absolutely. That's the only thing you could really take away from that. That's the only thing. I mean, because like I said, it was very intense campaigning. And so, we...
In other words, you're talking to each other, you're shouting at each other, but you're not talking to us.
Correct. You have left out the people that you were supposed to persuade. And politics is the art of persuasion. And if you're not persuading anybody, you're not doing anything.
But school is opening in a couple days.
Yes, yeah.
Your shadow education. First of all, your impression of the CSEC results and CAPE results. and also your prognosis in terms of what you've heard about preparedness for what is essentially the start of the new school year.
Yes. So a couple of things. The data coming out of CSEC, what I've had access to is more regional data, and I await more localized data from CSEC. But the information that I have is that we are seeing better performances in math and English. Paul, you and I would both know though that we would also need to look at how many students were supposed to sit the exam versus how many students actually sat the exam. And I think over the coming week, certainly before we re-enter the parliamentary space, I'll get that information, and whether I need to pose questions in parliament or a private member's motion or however I do it to get the information, it will be very instructive for all of us coming from the information that we have in terms of persons leaving the school system, etc. But as we discuss CSEC and CAPE, I do want to raise a very serious issue in terms of the administration of the bursaries. Um, Look, students who apply for this system and who are seeking financial assistance based on their academics and um, their overall performance, whether it be in extracurricular activity, community work, etc., they would have submitted their applications and then been accepted, and they would have been awarded a bursary. And I have messages from students, calls from parents, especially over the last school year, where the monies were not paid out on time. I went to school internationally. What happens is that you're not able to register for classes. You could even get kicked out of your dorm. That is a very scary, a terrible situation for any student to be in. For their parents to be calling around trying to figure out via the Ministry of Education, being told it's an administrative thing. When you are unable to register for classes, just for those who may not know what some of the systems are out there, you have your list of classes, the courses that you need to complete to get your degree, but there are different professors, etc. The better you perform in terms of your grade, the better access you have to certain classes. But if for the lack of release of funding for something that you promised these children, right, they achieve something and then you are awarded something and then you're not getting it in a timely fashion, I really hope.
Well, I could go one step further than that. And this is a practical example because I've heard it from people I know. Parents have to pay the money and then it's remitted back to them, because if they don't pay the money, because the money is not coming in a timely manner from the education
Yes,
ministry, they don't get their grades,
they don't get
they
anything.
can't register for new semesters, and in some cases, their admission is in question.
Yes, and that is a horrible, horrible thing to do to the young people of Trinidad and Tobago. And listen, I intend to raise it in Parliament. I want to also get into something on school repairs, something that I saw that was very disturbing with my own constituency. But I promised the students who reached out to me that every time I am on any platform, anywhere I'm speaking, that I will speak on their behalf, because I mean, what it's 2006 I left Trinidad to start my university career, and you are outside. If your parents are unable to put out that money up front, and you hear any stories, right? Parents are going to loan agency here, there, and everywhere just to be able to pay the money up front to their children. I mean, that is, and these are students who, like I said, did everything that they could have to get this award, and to then be treated in this manner, be told, with a shrug that it's administrative. I think it really is poor form from the ministry and the administration to not get this right, because the time is passing. This is going to be about the third year. At some point in time, you have to be held accountable and do what is right by the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And just on the school repairs, um, I was sent a Facebook video of the Gasparillo Secondary School, where the students could be in very significant danger. The steel beams are rotted 3/4 of the way through in some parts of it. And, you know, I would have said it, and we had this discussion here, as the dance we do at the beginning of every school year, which is why weren't the repairs done over the period of time the school had been closed, and the allocation is there, the money has been allocated to the ministry and just not utilized for what it was allocated for. And we have to question what, in terms of our own thinking, our own system of governance, that things that ought to be really basic and common sense approach. That look, schools closed, these are the itemized list, these are the highest priorities, this could endanger the students, let's get them fixed over the 2 month period, so that we aren't having these conversations come September every year. We really do need to do better than that.
Yeah.
What is
My
the
last
UNC's
question.
position? What is the UNC's position with regard to migrant children entering the education system?
Well, the UNC has been very clear on that education is a human right, and that you cannot have a system where you have allowed persons to stay in your country via the the permit between 2019 and 2020, and not make provisions for the children that are existing within our space. At the end of the day, if we are not in proactive and realistic in how we are treating with migrant children within our country, we are creating a bigger problem for ourselves 10, 15 years down the line. Because unless you have a clear, if you can't pretend they are not here, and you also cannot pretend that they will be leaving at some point in time. So therefore, what are you doing for persons who exist within Trinidad and Tobago currently, and who are under the age of 18 and require some access to education? We've been clear that the system as it is with the education permit is unrealistic. I sit on the Joint Select Committee for Human Rights. We would have met with Ministry of Education, um, the Ministry of National Security in terms of immigration, etc. And then we're being told that there is no barrier to migrant children. And once you have your documentation, I mean, again, very unrealistic, because the migrant children that we are worried about are not people migrating from Grenada and Jamaica. We're talking about a specific group who will not have their paperwork because they did not come here, via the Piaco International Airport. And we have to be very realistic, and burying our heads in the sand and pretending what exists in Trinidad and Tobago that it does not exist currently will lead us down a very unsustainable path.
Yeah. MP Haynes, I know we are coming upon 8 o'clock, but first of all, I don't want you to change, right? I always want you to be representative of what's good and what's best in the country, as opposed to what's best for the party. And that leads me to my question. How do you respond, or what's your opinion of the comment made on a political platform by the opposition leader, Mrs. Kamala Bissessa? I can't remember who she was referring to. It might have been Vassan Barat. That party comes before country and go to hell.
Okay, that statement was part of what an internal campaign. And look, we've already addressed some of these things about you know headline grabbing and gaining attention, and platform peacock. And I have known Mrs. Bissessa for many years at this point in time, and I can assure you that she's very much about country first. And so sometimes, what you say to as part of the fervor of platform politics is not really. You have to assess the totality of the person's contribution to Trinidad and Tobago. So,
You're better than I thought, You're good, You're good. All right.
Anita, thank you for being with us. So always a pleasure speaking to you.
I am very, very happy to be here, and I just want to wish everybody a very safe and productive week. I see you all start very spicy. It is still Monday. You have many days to go on, and happy Independence Day, Trinidad and Tobago, as we celebrate on Thursday. So, and
Is the opposition attending the parade?
that is on individual basis. I don't think we would know. gathering en masse.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
And I mean, I attended the parade. You know, I saw that the last time. Why last year I attended the parade. I didn't go to any savannah because the part of the parade I like the most is on the street. And so then I saw the news and they said, you know, boycott. And I was like, well, I was there. I wasn't where you were looking for me, but I was there. You know? So,
You were with the people.
well, you know, like I said, when throughout my years growing up, my dad is a police officer, and so the parade part and being on the streets and looking to see when you see somebody you know passing, I wouldn't see from the savannah. So you know.
All right.
All
We'll
right.
take that.
Yes. All right. Well,
All
have a
right.
great day.
All right. All the best to you, MP. And
Thanks, Anita.